All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Shelly Kilpatrick from BigCommerce, and I'm so glad you're here with us. We're going to explore what it really takes to bring a complex B2B business online, and not just from a technology perspective, but also operational and organizational changes that need to happen to make it successful. Today, I'm joined by two great guests, Jacob Jones from Sellars, who has led digital transformation within his organization, and Lance Owide from BigCommerce, who works closely with B2B brands navigating this shift every day. Jacob, would you like to kick us off with a quick intro and a little bit about Sellars?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jacob Jones. I'm the head of IT for Sellars. Sellars is a company that makes recycled paper products, a company I'm very proud of. I spent a good decade or so before coming to Sellars and some large Fortune 500 companies, working mostly in B2C. I spent years and years of my life in digital transformation, jail. And so, being a mid-sized company that I really believe in has been such a great transition for me and going to lead right into what we're going to talk about.
Nice. Well, welcome. And Lance, how about you share a quick intro as well?
Yeah, well, I really like that. You've spent years in digital transformation jail. I am sure that resonates with folks in the audience. I'm Lance Owide. I'm the general manager of manufacturing and distribution at BigCommerce. I work every day with manufacturers and distributors who are going through digital transformation. Hopefully they're not in jail, trying to drive revenue growth and operational efficiency through e-commerce.
Awesome. And before we get started, if you didn't know, BigCommerce is a flexible e-commerce platform built for manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers. We help brands grow revenue, reduce costs, and keep operations running smoothly as they scale. And now let's get this discussion going. So, Lance, I'll start with you. From your perspective, working with a lot of manufacturers and B2B brands, what trends are you seeing that are pushing companies to digitally transform?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors right now that are pushing businesses to go through large-scale digital transformations. And I think of it as push factors and pull factors. Push factors really being the external factors, the customers who want more efficient processes, who want to be able to automate their ordering, automate their invoice payments, etc. And then on the flip side, you've got the internal factors, the pull factors. Internally, it's tough out there. Margins are being squeezed and businesses want to get margin back. They want to put margin back into that business. It extracts some cost, and they can do that through digital transformation, through efficiency, through that same sort of automation.
Nice. And Jacob, how did those trends show up at Sellars, and kind of what made you and your brand want to invest more heavily in e-commerce?
So that was a very good summation of digital transformation. I want to say that, I was joking about digital transformation, but I did spend years in a very large digital transformation. So coming over to Sellars, I knew the value of the transformation. So I knew the value of the unlocks of, a e-commerce platform, what it does in the MarTech space and so forth. Had a lot of wins under my belt. So I was quite shocked when I took this role and found out that I inherited a project that had failed at least once, pretty much twice. And we were about, a month or so away from implementing something that would not have been, I think, a good approach. Just from my learnings of having displaced a custom-built e-commerce platform based on Magento and some different things in my past. We kind of had a similar thing going, and I knew that getting on a platform that allows for less development and customization, more capabilities, we can get on with actually getting value for the business. So that's what led me to the situation I was in, which is within about a 2-week span, I had to make a call as to whether or not I put the kibosh on the current plans that had been essentially in the works for years. And doing a pivot like that, I have to admit, was kind of scary, even though I had the experience and the visceral knowledge, right, of what's going to work versus what's not going to work. I still was this close to just going, let's just go through with it. Let's just execute what we got. I'm the new guy. I'm not gonna ruffle feathers here. Is this a hill I want to die on, right? So, but I couldn't sleep. I was like, we need to just do this. So within the span of, I'm going a little bit long here, but within the span of just a month, we started going to proof of concepts with all the leaders. I'm not going to name names, but you can look in the leader quadrant and go, here's all the players. But me being new to B2B, I had to figure out, what is different and how can I merge, the things that I know about B2C into sort of what I've learned about B2B and figure out what that looks like for sellers.
So you said proof of concept. When you were building your proof of concept, what did that look like? I feel like a lot of companies might not do that or are interested in learning about what does a proof of concept mean and how can they build one, and what did you do?
Well, so I do have a EA background or enterprise architecture background, right? So among some other things. So what you're really doing with a proof of concept is you're trying to make sure that, the rubber hits the road with whatever you decide on. A lot of decisions in business are, as many probably know here, done at an executive level, usually with some data, right? We have some slide decks, some slideware, some, whatever it is that we think is good. And it's just really an agile approach. You iterate, you test, get your smartest people in the trenches and go, what happens when I try to connect this to this? What happens when I try to do these business processes? And that's essentially what we ended up doing. We had some very proprietary and challenging B2B processes like our pricing engine and some other things. And just going, let me try to make that work in this product. And then let me make that kind of differentiating thing work in the product next to it, and just trying things like that, interconnecting the back end. I won't get into that right yet, but I'm sure you're going to.
Good tee up for the next question. So we know you ultimately chose BigCommerce. Yay. Very happy to have you as a customer. So, once you chose BigCommerce, you've decided, okay, this is the right e-commerce platform technology. What about other technologies? And, what challenges did you face integrating those and working within your existing systems? And how did you kind of navigate that?
Good question. I was going to say that I don't think we're unique in this, but Sellars, like a lot of manufacturers, and honestly, every company I've worked in has some level of tech debt. I don't think I'd quite seen this level of tech debt before, but I think that was probably one of the biggest pieces of the criteria were could our technical team, could our developers take our Franken system, for lack of a better word, which I won't even get into, you don't want to know, but could we take that and could we put this modern and nice scalable front end on that? What intricacies were there in interacting between the PIM and, again, a custom built PIM? I won't get into that, but imagine everything custom built, but things that we had developed between, inventory, invoicing and all the ordering and back-end components. And we just wanted to make sure like we were in a platform or ecosystem that was flexible, was well thought out for that sort of scenario to be able to sort of design our way out of the box we were in. And that was part of what we proved in the trenches. That plus the business logic, that's sort of, I'll call it what's the given inside the platform. Can I do pricing? Can I do different things that from a B2B standpoint I need to do? Can I do it without developing a bunch of stuff? Awesome. Okay, good. And then can I get this the opposite, right? Complex thing tied into that with, I'll call it the least problems.
And I think that's a really interesting approach. It's 4:30. Let's see who's paying attention. Like, who in this room, hands up, if you've been part of or worked on a failed digital transformation project, right? I think most of us will have seen them, right? You would be near them, around them.
If you admit it.
Yeah,
I won't admit it.
I think people,
This guy does.
There we go. A few more raised hands, right? And I think it takes a lot of gumption to suddenly say, actually, I'm going to pivot course, even though we're a month from actually choosing to go live. And I really like the approach you took, Jacob, which was to say, we're going to do a proof of concept. We're going to get as far as we can in 2 weeks, as close to our MVP or what we're going to eventually have. We're going to push each platform that we tested. I know you tested 3, and ultimately there were 2 kind of front runners. Push them as far as we can go, see how far we can get before we have to start customizing things. I think that's a really interesting kind of approach to thinking about a platform, right? And I'm curious, were there learnings as you went through that process? Where did that sort of take you as you look back on it? And things you wish you knew going into that maybe, you'd have done things slightly differently or approached it differently on,
Well, I don't know if this is exactly the answer to that, but I will say in reflection, the team I inherited, the IT team, I think thought I was nuts, probably, just honestly. Like looking back, I'm like, that was a kind of a crazy move if I think about it. But they ratcheted up. It was kind of a really good test of their gumption, because you have to stay up, work late nights, like to make something like that happen that time. And then of course, now that you've shifted and everyone has to go through a process, almost like a grieving process, to go like, okay, everything we worked on, we're going to throw it out. Okay, here's the new thing we're going to do. And then you have to accept that you have to do it in this amazingly short period, because nobody's changed the goalposts, right? You still have 3 months to put it in. And, I know others at our company, like our head of marketing, who happens to be right there, can attest to that. As this is kind of random fun fact, but she has an award that we gave her for Project Resurrection. Like, she's the queen of Project Resurrection, because she inherited the lump of coal that her and I basically worked on in that final hours to bring to fruition in 3 months. So I know that's not exactly the answer, but I thought it was a fun fact to share.
I think it's a nice one. Award people as you go along. I like that.
Yeah, I want an award.
Yeah.
Can I have an award? I work in marketing.
Somebody get her an award, please.
So Lance, we're talking about these kinds of challenges very specific to sellers. What do you see big picture? BigCommerce, we work with lots of different brands. What challenges do you see during the integration phase, and how can brands overcome any of those challenges?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different challenges, both from a technical perspective and obviously from a people process perspective as well. I think it all starts with people, to be honest, getting alignment within executive teams, getting alignment within sales teams, within the marketing team. Maybe handing out awards really helps and you get the alignment that you need. But that, I think, is a place where people really struggle today. E-commerce is often off on their own island, doing their own thing, and not bringing the business along. I think anchoring in what are our key goals as a business. If as a business we're driving revenue, that's going to dictate how we approach a project. If as a business we're focused on driving profit and bringing cost down to the business, that may completely change the way we think about e-commerce and what it can drive for us. And so I think that is really an important place to start. Anchor your cross-functional alignment in the business goal.
I know that is technically the right answer, and I know that I will say this. Of course, you bring people along. In the amount of time that we had, I'll say that, and others, I don't know if you might find yourself in a situation like this, so maybe this is good advice, but we had to really shift without building the vision completely from the executive level completely across and down. So really what we did was a smaller coalition of executives, and we just kind of barreled forth. I hate to say it, but it's for the best, because once you have a foundation of a platform that scales and you're on the right path and not the wrong path, I think you can be forgiven for maybe not bringing everyone along. However, you still have to there's some people you have to bring along for sure, even if it's in a very, I'll call it, agile way. So one of the things that I would say helped us succeed was bringing our sales team along. So rather than, say, hey, here's this new platform and we just shifted left and we're doing all this stuff and here's what it looks like, it's going live. We actually brought them in right away. This was Michelle's savvy helped us here, but we basically brought them in as collaborators. So instead of, others in B2B probably have a similar situation. We have very old school salespeople. If they are watching this, I mean that in the best way possible. But
we love you, salespeople.
Yeah. So, and if any are out there, just I'll go out the back door. But yeah. So bringing those guys along was really imperative, and actually, it's a really part of if you're just doing an agile methodology and you're doing managing a digital product, you always want to get customer feedback. You want to loop that in and iterate, right? So what we were able to do was bring them in before we even released it, and then also work with them, closely with the choice of who exactly are the pilot customers, and having them come along for that ride, making sure the customers are in good hands, they're getting VIP treatment, and sort of getting that part really smoothly engaged. But I think that's one of the things that was the most critical element for us to really succeed with the launch of that platform.
Nice. We love bringing along the sales teams, and I work in marketing, so marketing and sales can be friends or enemies. So making friends with the sales team, I found, is always a good thing. We want to bring them along. Lance is laughing because some of our sales team is here. Okay, so you've selected the platform, gone through the proof of concept. You've got your ragtag team who've implemented this super quickly. You've brought the sales teams along. Everyone's aligned. So when did everything kind of shift and come into place, and what results did you achieve?
I'm going to say where I think we really knew that we made the right decision, and because honestly, it probably didn't look like it at first. I think was during the pilot when our pilot users started saying things like, "Oh my gosh, you mean I can just click the button and order? Oh, I can see all my orders. I can see all my stuff." Like that type of feedback we got consistently. So naturally, those are also probably a lot, heavily slanted towards digital adoption type customers versus the ones that just pick up the phone and they don't ever want a computer. If you've got any customers like that, or you'll know what I'm talking about. So there's definitely different adoption rates, but the feedback we got was really overwhelmingly positive, and I think that made everyone kind of rise up in enthusiasm and buy-in and all that good stuff. But that was it, the customer feedback in the pilot. I could get into more details of exact, other anecdotes, but I think that sums it up.
I mean, I know I have this lovely slide with some great metrics from when we did our case study. So I think, it's been a minute even since we did that. What other results, customer adoption, anything, Lance brought up, are you trying to save efficiencies, grow revenue, any of those other goals you were able to achieve?
Well, so something Lance said about, bringing the organization along, aligning the organization's goals. Since we kind of did this in reverse a little bit, not totally, because you can't succeed unless you bring people along. We are now getting to the point where we're finding those, I'll call it, buzzword, but low-hanging fruit type of things where we have unlocks, another buzzword, sorry, everybody. But, the low-hanging fruit of different channels, digital channels that we can start digging into, opportunities to bring our distributors and give them more visibility into, what they're selling and so forth through our e-commerce platform. But I'll just say it's like one thing after another, little unlocks. And that is actually, to me, a resounding success. That was my hope was, without a perfect, here's your 3-year plan, exactly how the MarTech stack is going to shape. We knew that if we just go in the right direction, we can start to form that. So we formed that and are still forming sort of, I'll call it our 3-year plan. But what's nice is when you get wins and you keep kind of, doing the right thing, nobody's looking at you and saying, well, you weren't planful enough. Right? We didn't align it with the corporate goals perfectly. Sometimes the corporation isn't even ready for some of the goals that you would have in mind. Definitely not the level of like, where I worked before Foot Locker,
Yeah.
We had very specific metrics and a very specific vision of how you would turn, retail into, an online experience, which is, a pretty drastic shift. So we're not quite at that level of detail, but it doesn't matter because there's value and there's obvious wins and everybody sees it.
Yeah.
That's one of the exciting things about B2B is you're not like the B2C companies that have this very rigid plan in place. You can be innovative, do things differently, experiment and see what works. So, Lance, what advice would you give to, B2B businesses that are looking to start a digital transformation or continue one because we know, that doesn't end?
Yeah,
that's a forever thing.
Continuous, forever cycle of digital transformation, always trying to improve. And I think that's sort of how you think about it, Jacob. You went live, I think, in 3 months after a 2-week proof of concept, which is quite incredible. And I actually think that's sort of a great way to think about it, which is how can I achieve success and ROI quickly to prove that this is going to bring goodness into the business, whether that's revenue growth or operational efficiency. I think another thing that you've sort of got to also think about as you're approaching digital transformation is having the right data in the systems that you're going to be pulling that data from, whether that's, a PIM, an ERP, or other 3-letter acronym system that, there's enough of them out there. And as you approach that data, we at BigCommerce, actually, we have a team that dedicated just to that, a team called Feedonomics. And so for those that are actually in the room and are thinking about, hey, I'm going to start a digital transformation, I'm not sure, am I ready? Have I got the data right within my different systems? Our Feedonomics team will actually give you a free data audit, which I think is a great place to start. They'll look at what fees do you have coming in, where are you sending them out, which systems are they going to, and using AI, how can we optimize that for improved conversion, improved efficiency? So I think that's a really good place to start around the data.
And I did not mention that, but that was another layer to this was realizing our data wasn't good. And we called it our customer data journey. We had to create a whole initiative around it. And I mean, the amount of work the teams have put in to correct that, is astounding. And anyone here that's ran into this, you scale with your data, and sooner or later you realize you don't quite have master data, or you have issues, and now it limits you from being able to enable capabilities that you need in digital land. Well, you're not alone. We definitely spend a lot of time there. So what you're saying is absolutely true.
All right, Jacob, we have almost no time left.
0 minutes?
We have 0 minutes left. But we did a podcast with Jacob on our new podcast that we recently launched, B2B Bites. We would love for you to subscribe, and you can hear more from Jacob and Lance as they talk about how Sellars has continued to work on their digital transformation. Great advice. We're so happy both of you joined us here. If anybody wants to learn more about BigCommerce, you can come visit us at booth 309. Booth 309. I think we all know where the exhibitors are. So we'll be there. Come say hi, and thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.